Hey guys, welcome to Relationship Loft TV, the place to be to create a marriage you love. I'm Kelly Vandiver.
And I'm Ned Vandiver.
And in today's episode, we are going to be talking about triggers and emotional dysregulation. That is what the conversation is going to be about today. Triggers and emotional dysregulation happens all the time, pretty much every day with most couples. I know it still happens for Ned and I from time to time, right?
Yes.
We just got off a conversation,
Yeah.
a meaty conversation.
Yeah.
Before recording this video. In fact, we had to talk
about our triggers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before getting on this talk. So it's interesting. We're talking about triggers today. Yeah. So the reason we're talking about this is because when clients come to us and there's so much to learn, just in terms of the skills and the tools and everything. But before we can even get to that with people, this is like the number one thing that we have to address with our clients is self-awareness.
That's the big thing.
Like self-awareness is everything. And we have to learn to become really self-aware of our triggers, what triggers us,
our stories
about our partner. And we have to become really self-aware of when we have been hijacked, basically, by our limbic system. And now we are totally in our emotions and we're totally emotionally dysregulated, which causes all of the fighting that people get sick and tired of having the same old fights over and over and over again, right? Yeah. Because it becomes just a circular, repetitive argument.
And a lot of it, like you said, the primary thing
over and over again.
The primary thing here is the lack of awareness of our triggers, what it means to be triggered, where the triggers come from. Why do we get triggered in the first place, right? Especially by the people who we love the most of the time, right? So, I mean, it is something that a lot of us struggle with. And like Kelly said, we're always working on our triggers. You always have them. The big thing is to learn how to operate with them and be more productive in terms of like regulating yourself around them.
Right? Managing them, because it's going to happen. And the cool thing that everyone should know is we are always triggering our partner. We're either triggering them in positive ways or we're triggering them in negative ways. If we're bringing out the best in them, we're bringing out their mature, wise, happy adult self. When we're triggering them in a negative way, we're going to bring out sort of their alter ego, the worst parts of them, that triggered, hurt inner child.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So I really want to understand what triggers are. Like what?
You know what triggers are.
Yeah, I know, but I'm like for other people, because I know a lot of people are confused sometimes. They say I'm triggered or I feel triggered, but I don't think people will truly understand. We talk about this sometimes when we talk about people having control over you, right? Kelly and I teach from our experience and also from, our teachers that no one has any control over you. The feelings, the emotions that we emote when we have an experience external to us, those things already exist within us. Okay, so that's truly what we're talking about in terms of getting triggered, is something that is affecting us emotionally, that moves us into an emotional state within ourselves that is already existing within us.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So I wanted to make that clear because I think there's a lot of confusion around having control over them or people having control over us and causing things
causing, like, basically blaming our partners
like
for our triggers.
You make me feel this way.
You make me feel this way. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
No one can make you feel any way. So, and that's the thing. It's like people a lot of times will be like, am I just with the wrong person? Because they're just, look, I'm all about being with the right person. We're all about being with an aligned partner. That's super important. And ultimately, you want to be with a person who isn't constantly triggering you. Triggers, yes, until you learn how to work through them, you're going to be a walking trigger. That's your own stuff. But eventually you want to get to a place with your partner where you're not constantly activating each other, because that is a whole other issue. But what I really want to challenge everyone with today is the idea that Ned and I live by, and that is that triggers are a gift. It's like people are like, what do you do with triggers? Like, when they happen, you celebrate the hell out of them because they shine the light inward into yourself on the things that still need to be processed, that still need to be dealt with, that still need to be looked at and healed. And as you learn the process and the practice of emotional regulation, which we'll be talking about on our next episode, you heal yourself a little bit more each time you learn how to work with yourself. But today we're just talking about the triggers and what happens when we get triggered. Okay. But just remember that triggers are a gift. Our partners are really a gift to us when they activate the trigger.
And also remember that, for some of us, our partners gift us with really big presents. Okay. And what I mean by that is we get triggered a lot from our partners sometimes. Okay. So that means we have a lot of healing to do.
We're getting a lot of presents.
There's a lot of inner work
from our partners.
From our partners. That's what I mean by that. Sometimes it's a really big gift that we really need to go inward and really figure out. Okay.
Yeah, for sure. So I want to be really clear about this before we move forward, and we're going to answer, like, what is emotional dysregulation? What is that? But before I say that, I want to reiterate, this is so important. If you are with a toxic partner, okay, if you're with an abusive partner, all right, I'm talking about physical abuse, I'm talking about psychological abuse. We do not condone being in those kinds of relationships. We do not condone being in a toxic environment, okay? And people who are toxic need a whole other level of care that they really need to do on their own. And it's, so I just always like to start off these kinds of conversations with, like, when you're just with a normal, like, healthy person and you're just triggering the hell out of one another, that's a totally different situation than being with someone who is not willing to or capable of doing this inner work. So it's really important to make that distinction, because what we teach, a pretty normally healthy person can listen to what we teach, they can apply it, and they can get great results. But if you're with a toxic partner, you can try to apply what we teach you to try to affect the current dynamic between you, and you're not really going to get very far. You'll start to feel better, but it's only going to go so far, because toxic individuals, that's a whole other episode.
Yeah.
Right. But I just wanted to make that distinction. It's really important that people understand that if you're with a toxic partner, you really need to get out of that relationship and make your exit plan. Okay. And if you need help deciphering as to whether or not you're in a toxic relationship, you can reach out to us and we can do a free consult, and we can talk to you for a few minutes and see, is this partner, does this partner have the potential to do this work and to heal and to grow? Or is this a person who just is not mature enough to be in a relationship, right? You can reach out to us and we can help you decipher that. So what is emotional dysregulation?
Yeah, what is it?
I was just emotionally dysregulated earlier.
For me, and for many people, the experience of being emotionally dysregulated, we see ourselves in these emotions that really make you feel powerless. And part of it is there's a lot of attachment to stories that don't really serve us. And the total experience is very, very negative because of the association with the stories. And a lot of times one story will fuel and feed into another story. And this is how we find ourselves mind spinning and really not having and creating a great experience with our partners.
Yeah. So my definition of emotional regulation, just to make it very simple, is you have been hijacked by your limbic system. Okay. You are operating in fight or flight. You are dysregulated. And now you're going to be moving into old patterns, old stories that are default mode. They are programmed in you subconsciously, and something triggered you. Okay. And now you have been taken over. Okay. That is emotional dysregulation. All right. So what triggers an emotional dysregulation?
It could be
your husband. We talked about that one earlier. Left the toilet seat up.
Yeah.
And you went and sat down on it. And you're like, what the hell? Yeah. He doesn't love me. He does not care about me. I don't feel cared for. Right. All the stories.
Yeah. It could be your husband making promises that they don't keep. Right. Which starts to spin off into a story of not feeling, again, taken care of, cared for, loved.
A big one that is triggering for a lot of people, just your spouse can talk to you a certain way in just a certain tone. Or maybe someone is like doing a dig and just like being condescending or saying that thing that is going to get under the skin of your partner, like that passive aggressive retaliation type of stuff. It could be around sex. Sex is a really triggering thing for both men and women, where one partner really wants to connect sexually and the other one doesn't. And that happens on both sides, for men and for women, for different reasons. Usually for women, it's because they don't feel emotionally connected to their partner. They feel dismissed a lot of the time. And for men, they will withdraw sexually when they are stressed, when they are, holding on to resentment, when things are bothering them. So, there's that as well. But basically, there's a laundry list of the different things that could trigger you to become emotionally dysregulated. But usually it's just energy that you feel from your partner. And usually it's an energy of contempt. Usually I find that anyway, it's an energy of contempt. Yeah. Like I have contempt for you, or you have contempt for me. And that is something that is unspoken. You really don't even have to say anything to your partner, right? You can just feel their energy.
Yeah. I mean, and it can be children, it could be finances, it could be
the money issues in the house,
a number of different things.
It could be the kids. It could be parenting styles are different.
Anytime you feel yourself, we'll get to the feelings around this too. But anytime you find yourself in a story of negativity about your partner, you're in a triggered state.
You're emotionally dysregulated.
Yeah. Okay. So there's a variety. It can cover the gamut in terms of like what personally triggers us, because a lot of what the triggers stem from are adaptations and stories from our childhood. This is where the majority, if not all, of the triggers come from. Okay. At some point in your childhood, you experienced or had an experience that you created a story around, okay, and you carried with you subconsciously, because we're usually not present to them. We usually don't even know they're there, usually until we get into relationship. Okay, so this is such a big problem because it goes unseen and undiscovered by many of us. We don't even know that they're there. We don't even know that these triggers are there. When you're single, you know, you're operating by yourself. This stuff, you're not even aware of it. You can facilitate and move yourself from things that generally, especially an individual, very easily, so that you don't get to a triggered place. But when you're in relationship, intimate relationship, this is where, again, you have to learn to reframe these experiences with your spouse, your partner, when you're in relationship, and find the gift in the delivery of this trigger for yourself, because it is a gift. You do need to be healed of these stories. They keep you stuck. I know. I've been there. I've lived in them. I still work on them. I have to, right? So this is why it's such a great gift for us, because there are many barriers that these stories create. There are many barriers that these triggers create for us. And they become hurdles in terms of our productivity in life, sometimes around finances, sometimes around showing up lovingly, respectfully. Okay. So we have to get a grip on these stories.
Yeah. So what does emotional dysregulation feel like? This is a really great question that we got. So it basically feels like in the moment when it happens, you can be fine. And then all of a sudden you feel a wave of emotional, we call it the whoosh, just come over you. And you can be fine 1 minute and the next just be like,
what's going on here?
Oh, I'm pissed.
Yeah.
Ooh, I'm angry. Here you go again. Here we go again. You always do this, right? You. Lots of you statements, lots of you always.
You are.
Is this ever right? It's just like, here we go again. But basically, it's an emotional whoosh that comes over you. And now you are no longer here in the prefrontal cortex, operating as a mature, calm adult. You are now in your limbic system and you are living in default mode.
Yeah.
And it is a very visceral thing. You can feel it because you can feel it. It does not feel good. You would associate it, if you become more self-aware, with just not liking the way it feels.
Yeah. And it can be shoulder tightness. It can be your throat getting sore.
Your hands can get sweaty.
Your
heart can start pounding.
Your head can start hurting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can start crying.
Your back can start hurting.
You can get very overwhelmed. I mean, I have been in a room with a person who has always been very triggering for me, and just having a basic conversation and just bursting into tears. So it's very much when you move into that, you are in what we call your adaptive child state. You are now a child. You are in fight or flight. You've been hijacked by your limbic system. Okay. And so that's what it feels like. It's very physical. It's very visceral. That's why, we really have people learn how to start tuning into how they're feeling in their body physically. When we start teaching about the self-awareness piece of this work.
Yeah, that's one of the first indicators and identifiers for us, is what's going on. How am I feeling in my body right now? And you actually have to, you're going to have to try to figure this out, because again, we're so accustomed. This is so automatic for most people. They don't associate and think about the emotions that are going through them. They just know how they feel, and they're usually making it about their partner, right? But very rarely are they actually considering what's going on in their body. All right. And if they do, it might be like, wow, you get done, right? You have a heated exchange with your partner and you walk away and you're rubbing your neck because your neck's tight and hurting or something like that. Or you feel exhausted as a result of the conversation and the dialogue. These are indicators that you are triggered or have been in a triggered state. Okay. So we have to make ourselves aware of these things so that we can effectively start to work on them.
Yeah. So what are the signs of emotional dysregulation? And we'll piggyback off of what we were just talking about in terms of the physical symptoms. It's very visceral. Again, it's going to feel like a wave just came over you. You can be fine 1 minute and not fine the next. Signs of emotional dysregulation can be, one of the big ones for me is, okay, now I'm going into old story. I'm going right into the same old story about my partner. I'm going into the same old story about my kid or whoever it is I'm dealing with. And we call them parallel thoughts. So it's like this negative thought. Now I'm going to end this negative thought and this negative thought and this negative thought. So it's the parallel thinking will happen when you are triggered. Yeah. Okay. That is one of the big signs that you're emotionally dysregulated. Another big one is mind spinning. And that is one of the big ones that happens for a lot of people. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible place to be, because what happens is they get caught up in this feedback loop. And it's like they're just caught up in this feedback loop and they just cannot hop off of it.
Yeah.
And
I've literally done that before. I've been in the kitchen. I will literally be talking to myself sometimes, slamming doors, the cabinets. And these are just examples that I'm talking about when you are witnessing somebody in a triggered state, right? And you can see yourself there sometimes, but I know for me, I have a tendency to, be talking to myself and saying things that I'm thinking out loud. And some of the kids have caught me in this space sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sometimes you do that when you're happy though, too.
I do. Yeah. But yeah, I mean.
But yeah, the mind spinning. So, I mean, I've had clients who are just triggered, because our clients know they can reach out to us at any time via text. Because we offer a very high level of coaching. So our clients can reach out to us at any time on our cell phones. And I mean, I'll have clients and they're just going on and on with the book of texts, da, 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 da. And I'm like, you're triggered. You're in your old story. I'm like, let's work through this. But it's that same story. It's that same dialogue, and you're just spinning on it and you can't get out of it. And that is so exhaustive. So it's exhaustive mind spinning thinking of the same shit you've been spinning on for years. Yeah. Okay. Another sign that you are emotionally dysregulated is it depends on the flavor of the persona, the person. Okay. And it depends on what kind of attachment style you have. It depends on your personality. It depends on whether or not you're more avoidant in relationship or more anxious in relationship. You've heard of avoidant attachment styles and
avoidant,
anxious and avoidant attachment styles. So it really depends on the person. But if you're a person who's a little more boundaryless, a little more anxious, when you're triggered, you may get loud. You may get really obtuse. You may be getting up in people's faces, you might be just being really boundaryless with your words.
Yeah, I was going to say your language. People have a tendency to
really
move
harsh.
Into more aggressive language.
Yeah.
And your thoughts too, not just out of your mouth. Just you might be thinking these same words that might fly out of your mouth.
Yeah. Same old story. Like we call it toxic venting, like just venting onto your partner, like with no end in sight. About just all the things, right? The laundry list. And you're just going to let your partner know just how bad you feel, until you're done venting, right? That is one flavor of it. Yeah. Another flavor of it could look totally opposite of that, which would be the more avoidant style, which is when an avoidant becomes emotionally dysregulated, all they want to do is wall off and withdraw. Okay. Which is another losing strategy in relationship. I'm just going to withdraw. And so it can look differently depending on the person. Yeah. But those are some of the signs of emotional dysregulation. It can be loud, it can be quiet and withdrawn. But you're always going to feel it in your body and you're always going to hear the stories.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the most common thing.
Can emotional dysregulation be inherited? This is such a great question. And it's a very interesting question to chat about.
Yeah.
Because it's like,
in part, yes. And in part, no, because you have control, so it's, you always talk about this. This is one of your favorite topics is
inherited.
Well, talking about neuroplasticity, in terms of like controlling.
So, I think it's a great question. Can it be inherited? And it's like, yes, it can. Okay. Not in the sense that most people would think like, oh, it's this genetic DNA type of situation, even though,
there are some people
it could be like genetically that these things energetically are passed down through the lineage. I think that that's definitely a possibility, that we all as human beings are dealing with ancestral things. Just because I understand about energy and I understand about DNA and I understand what happens in the womb to babies, of pregnant mothers who are extremely stressed out or whatever, because of what they are carrying from their lineage. So yes, but mostly, yes, it's inherited, because how we behave a lot has to do with what was modeled for us growing up. How was mom? How was dad? Did they fight a lot? Were they loud? I grew up in a home with two fighters for parents. Okay. A mom and a dad, both of them who fought. Okay. And they were both loud and they were both over the top. And so there was just a lot of that chaos going on in my house. So, as I grew up, I took on those behaviors. Okay. And I've had to work very hard and diligently for years to come out from underneath that pattern of behavior.
And for me, I grew up with parents. One was walled off and one was a little bit more aggressive in nature. So I have a tendency to take on both. All right. I can become walled off and withdrawn, and I can also become belligerent at times, outspoken, aggressively. Right. So these are things that we really, when we're talking about inheriting these things, a big factor is, again, the modeling and what we experience in our childhood and what we witness from our parents. Now, again, a lot of these things we don't know, and we don't fully understand until we get older and we start to act out in these ways. And even still, we question as to why we do it. But our brains are, between the ages of 0 and 7, they're in a state called theta. So, and this means it's almost like a hypnotic state. It is a hypnotic state. Your brain is like a sponge at this age. We're taking in everything that we're experiencing, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, what we're tasting. All of these things are just being downloaded into this part of the brain that's like a computer, the subconscious, right? And so we won't know what stories are there until we actually do some digging. When we get older, we will not understand why these emotions come up for us. We won't understand why we behave in the ways and respond in the ways when we do get triggered. Okay. A lot of this stuff has been taught and passed down. And that's what in terms of like this being inherited, that's the way we share and our understanding from our experience, what this looks like as being inherited. As taking this on from our parents. It's a behavior that is actually programmed into you.
Yeah. Okay. And I would say, it is passed down through the lineage energetically, both in that way and in just our programming after we get here as babies and being in theta state from 0 to 7, what we are programmed with. Because we always, in default mode, after we get through those years of childhood, move through adolescence, we are now creating in default mode with what we were programmed with, which is why so many people end in divorce, because there's just so much dysfunction, because people don't know the proper way to be relational. They don't have the skills. So we just be who we were downloaded to be.
Yeah. We live from our programs.
Yeah. We live from our programs. And so, we definitely inherit the dysfunction. And the good news is though that we can reprogram ourselves and we can get out from underneath the grip of these patterns that we have been programmed with, both by our parents or the people who raised us and by our culture. We can. Yeah. We know because we've done it. Yeah. We've created something totally different that we were not raised with.
It took a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of work, but it's well worth it. And to fully understand the depth and breadth of what these programs do,
and let's move into the next question.
Yeah. Most people.
Do I have emotional dysregulation?
Yeah.
And you can go ahead with what you were saying.
I was going to say, most people, you have to understand that most people operate on average during the course of their day, 95% of what they're doing day to day, they're operating from their subconscious, the programs. Okay. So it's very easy to repeat patterns because the depth and the deepness of these patterns is so deep. These programs are so deep. It's very difficult to start to change these patterns of thought and behavior, again, without understanding that they're there, where they come from. Okay. But it's why you find yourselves a lot of times in these cycles that you feel like these loops of arguing, these consistent loops of arguing and emotional challenge and relational challenges over and over again. Okay. Because most of us are operating from the subconscious programs and the thoughts, and we don't know it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that very clear for people. So that I know a lot of people are like, the big thing here is, unlike something that is truly DNA inherited, all right, you can change these patterns. Kelly has, I have, there are different ways that you can do this. Okay. But it can be done, and you can reprogram these programs. But that is And well, let's just keep it moving. I want to go on to our next question that is posed by.
So do I have emotional dysregulation is a question that we get a lot. And the answer to that is yes, you do. Everybody has emotional dysregulation. It's not a question of if you have it, but when is the next time it will happen? Because everybody has times of emotional dysregulation and feeling triggered. Feeling triggered, being triggered, and emotional dysregulation, they go hand in hand. They could even be used interchangeably, those two words. But yes, you have emotional dysregulation issues, as do I, as does Ned, as does every person on the planet. It's just that some people know how to emotionally regulate and some people do not. And like I said, in the very beginning of this talk, that is the number one skill we teach our clients how to do. Because if you can't do that skill, if you do not have the skill of emotional regulation, when you get triggered and you don't know how to process your emotions and go through a process to get to the other side of these things and heal yourself, you're going to stay in the exact same place that you are now. And any skills that you learn, it won't matter, because this is the proto skill. This is the proto skill, the number one skill before all other skills. You must learn how to do this. Is the number one most important part of self-awareness that there is. Okay. So everybody's got it. And we must learn how to manage it and bring ourselves back down to earth, get out of our limbic system and get centered and here again. Okay. Last question. How does emotional dysregulation affect relationship? That's a really good question. It affects every part of your relationship, because if you are walking around resentful and angry and hurt and feeling like a victim in the relationship, and you're just not feeling understood, and you're just not feeling heard, and you're not feeling seen, and you're completely emotionally disconnected from your partner, you're going to be a walking trigger. Okay. Yeah. And your partner could do or say anything, and you're going to get dysregulated. Okay. So that's how it affects the relationship first and foremost, is that if you're a walking trigger, you're going to be constantly triggering each other in a negative way.
Exactly. And so what you want to understand is that when you're operating from that place of negativity, this is what you begin to create in terms of your dynamic with your partner and your spouse. So a lot of times, people have to try to distract themselves, away from dealing with their partner, because most of the time, especially we get into when we're in these cycles, most of the time we are triggered, and the only thing we can think about when we think about our partner are negative thoughts. So the only thing the only thing we want to do is really avoid them at some point, because we feel like the only thing we're going to do is start an argument whenever we start talking to them. So this is how it actually shows up in a lot of relationships. And this is what leads a lot of people to an attorney's office or, a mediator, because they feel like they can't get out of this loop. So it affects many, many, many relationships every day.
And then what you just said about, feeling like getting away from your partner because you're just always feeling these feelings and you just want to get away from them. What people will do when they're emotionally dysregulated is they will turn to what we call their misery stabilizers. People use misery stabilizers, which eventually become addictions for some people. Instead of turning to their partner because they can't, because they're angry and resentful, they will to soothe themselves, to escape their reality, to get away from their partner, meaning I can be present with you, meaning we can be in the same house, but I can't be present with you. I can't connect to you because I'm so angry with you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to turn to my misery stabilizer. It could be, your phone, your cell phone, scrolling social media. It could be the video games. A lot of the guys play the video games. It could be the computer. It could be work. Some people are workaholics. It could be alcohol. Okay. A lot of people turn to alcohol. A lot of people turn to porn. Men turn to porn. And the worst thing that happens for a lot of people is they will move into turning towards another person.
Unfortunately,
they will turn into another person and have emotional affairs, which eventually lead to sexual affairs. And now, you're dealing with infidelity, which is a whole next level wound that has to be healed.
Exactly.
So that is another way it can really show up and affect the relationship. Yeah. Okay. Not just more contempt between the two of you, but now we're dealing with addiction. Okay. Alcohol addiction, drug addiction, sex addiction, love addiction, work addiction, an addiction to being busy. Some women just go with the kids and the sports and the just everything. They say yes to everything just to escape their reality at home with their husband that they're completely emotionally disconnected with.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a problem.
Yeah.
And so how do we solve this problem? How do we solve this problem of emotional dysregulation? We're going to answer that on our next episode, where we're going to talk all about emotional regulation, a whole episode on that. So be sure to tune in for that. The solution is you got to get a hold of yourself. You've got to learn how to stop when you feel that whoosh come over you. Breathe and ground yourself. Okay. And if any of these things resonated with you today in your marriage and you need help because you are on the brink and you don't know how to turn this ship of your marriage around, you can give us a call at the Loft at 678-721-4244. You can also visit us on our website, which is therelationshiploft.com. You can book a free consult with us and we can just see what's going on with you. And if we can help you, we can let you know how. And if not, we can steer you in the right direction of some resources that could help you.
You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube at The Relationship Loft. And we are also on TikTok at The Kelly Vandiver and also at The Ned Vandiver.
Yes. So make sure to subscribe, hit that like button wherever you're seeing this, and we'll see you on our next episode.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Do you want to end it?